Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Abbey Research Reads. I am Dr. Kristen, and today I want to talk to you about the book Raceless. I'm going to see if I can bring up the cover on my iPad and if it shows up at all, by Georgina Lawton. Yeah, you guys can see that. So Raceless by Georgina Lawton she's a British author who is British and Irish, and also happens to be mixed race, both black and white, although she points out very eloquently in the book that mixed race is a super problematic term because it posits that there is such thing as a pure race on some level, and we'll get to that in a minute. Georgina has a very specific story that I found out throughout the book is not actually as unique as we may think it is, which is that she was born to white parents. She is the product of a one-night stand her mother had at a pub with a black man her mother remembers nothing about. And then her father, however, when she kind of came out of the womb as a obviously black child, they did this thing about how there were Spaniards a lot in that part of Ireland. And so maybe all the way back, and that's why she's darker, but don't worry, she's white. Kind of thing. And so like everyone around Georgina her whole life, except for like Georgina's parents and Georgina's immediate family, seemed to just be like, okay, so she's black, but we're not talking about it. Got it. And it all kind of came to a head when she did a genealogy, ancestry.com thing that came back with it as a 0% chance that the man that she knew of as her father was her genetic father. And this absolutely shot her into a whole new journey about what it meant to be her, what it meant to be black, what it meant to be white, what it meant to be mixed race, what it meant to be British and Irish and a whole lot of other things. And she travels the world and writes about it in this. It is easily one of the most top 5 fascinating memoirs. Her writing style is engaging. She's written for a lot of publications. I think I found her first on Twitter, which is how I heard about the book. And she's just a great writer and she's a great storyteller, which really helps. And she's done a lot of research. I'm pulling up my notes for this because thank you to the Kindle app on my iPad, I could make highlights so that I can make sure to read a couple things to you because I want to read 2 very specific quotes for you guys right now. One is kind of long and the other one's kind of short. So ethnicity and race have long been conflated in our society. She says this on page 21. Science has concluded that neither has any sort of genetic basis, but both have played a huge role in formulating the human condition. Ethnicity is based around cultural and social identities, and as such, it is largely interchangeable. Religious customs, language, and culture all connote a person's ethnicity. So those are kind of a soup together, as it were. But race is the idea that we can group people by distinct physical qualities. Just think about that. Society works in that you can be part of many ethnic groups, but only really one racial group. Mixed heritage individuals will almost always find themselves categorized by their minority background. She does it in the book. I potentially did it when I called her a black child. I used the language that she used, but this is just a thing. I can be Irish, Nigerian, and British ethnically, but I will always be black racially, and first and foremost for that matter, as she just said. Assumptions around the cultural identities of minority individuals are frequent and in many ways to be expected. Knowing where to place an individual helps us relate to them, creating a sort of cultural shorthand that we can lean into so we can all communicate. But migration and mixing are shaping a multicultural world, and a richness of cultures, ethnicities, and races and customs means that it is no longer easy or acceptable to successfully locate a person's ethnic or racial identity based solely on what you can see. In our Colonizers World Tour coverage, you will hear frequently Dr. Aaron and I talk about how the colonizers categorized the indigenous people of wherever they were based on physical characteristics. This is one of the most famous things that happened in Rwanda and the Congo, for instance, that when the Germans showed up, they literally measured noses and thought the size of one's forehead equated to how intelligent somebody was. That sounds abhorrent to a lot of people, but we still often subconsciously do it. But Georgina's point is well taken. Not only should we never have done that, but we absolutely cannot place people now entirely based on what we can see. The world is simply too complicated for that. Additionally, there's one more thing that I already brought up about the mixed race, but I want us to think about it. So this is on page 46. Let's not forget that the term mixed race is problematic in and of itself, suggesting that there is such a thing as a pure race, black or white, and that you as a mixed person represent a muddying of genes, a blurring of racial boundaries. These racial boundaries are nonsensical, have no inherent biological meaning, and were constructed by European powers to consolidate power and wealth and justify the subjugation of the Black other. When I was teaching sociology, I talked a lot about reminding my students that race had absolutely no genetic background, really whatsoever. It has no standing on brain power or personality or anything else. There's no link between race and anything else internal. There's obviously a lot of links between race and external privilege and prejudice, but there's nothing but links between race internally. It's just not how it works. And that was something that my students were really comfortable with on face value. But we had to get into conversations about 1/4 this, 1/8 this, how many. And in America, we have to have those conversations all the time. Or we frequently have them, I should say. We don't have to, but we frequently do. At one point, does race even matter in terms of personal identity outside of the subjugation or prejudice that somebody would feel from external judgments regarding on what they look like? Race is messy, and so is how we treat it. But one of the myriad of reasons we need to get better at having empathetic and intense and conversations is that I guarantee you, if you ran across Georgina Lawton on the street, you would assume a whole lot of things about her that aren't necessarily true. Doing life with Georgina, which is, she's allowed us an incredible, I keep pointing to my iPad, by the way, an incredible entry into her life. She has gifted us with a whole lot of truth that we may or may not have earned if we were really in her day-to-day life. Allows us to investigate our own understandings of race, whether it is something that we think about frequently or never think about, in a fresh way that I deeply, deeply appreciated. I honestly cannot recommend this book highly enough. Again, it's Raceless by Georgina Lawton. And please come back and tell me all about it once you have read it. Oh, I got it at my library. Again, available everywhere. There'll be links in the show notes. That's it for me from Abbey Research Reads. I am Dr. Kristen, and I will see you next time. Bye.